Hey, hello everyone. It is November 15th, 2015, and we've all just come back from PASIC, so we're doing a post-PASIC episode to talk about what we saw, what we did, and what we think about various things. So with me, as always, are Megan Arns,
Hello.
Laurel Black,
Hi.
and Ben Charles.
Hi, everybody.
Ben, how was your PASIC, buddy?
Okay. Casey is already with the comments about how I wasn't able to make it to PASIC this year because sadly I had a whole bunch of commitments here. I had to go to a football game with the marching band, and I had my percussion ensemble concert and all sorts of stuff, so I sadly wasn't able to make it. But I
So
hope everyone else
Ben was doing his job instead of going to PASIC.
I was doing real work, Casey.
Yeah, I love my new job. I just left a sticky note on my door. It said I'm not here, and that was
At
it.
PASIC.
Yeah, no, not even that. Just like I'm gone. Yeah, no problem. Nothing at all. So yeah, that's right. You guys both had your percussion ensemble concerts. How were they?
Yeah.
Mine was, I almost said they were both really good because I can't speak to Megan's. But I was pleased with how mine came off. Megan and I both did Crown of Thorns on our concerts, which I'm actually planning on talking about on a future episode, but that is a really interesting, cool, great piece of music that I look forward to talking about more in depth soon.
Do you guys both conduct?
I did.
Yeah.
Did you, Megan? Yeah.
I did, yeah.
How was your 11/8 pattern?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yeah. Yeah, so we're talking about there's this one really, really dicey part in the piece that's in a fast 11/8, so it's basically 5/4 with an extra eighth note on beat 4. And there's crazy quarter note triplets going over bar lines and really difficult marimba licks happening all at the same time. So yeah, it's kind of, I told my students it's a lot easier to conduct that piece than play it because I'm just up there waving a stick.
Right.
What else did you guys do, real quick?
Megan?
Well, ours in the fall, our concert is called Percussion Extravaganza. So we kind of try to do a sampling of everything, of many of the things that are happening in our program. So Julie and I both volunteer at Lee Elementary School, and we do a world drumming class. It's an expressive arts school, and she's been doing it for a long time, and she invited me to join her last year. So they always open the concert. She takes the fourth graders, I take the fifth graders, and we do a piece with them. Then we did, our steel band played a couple of tunes, percussion ensemble, we did Crown of Thorns, we did Brian Nosny's Sextet Sharps, Susan Powell's Gilded Cage, Powasar Sculpture in Wood. We did 3 movements of Paul Lansky's Threads with a really cool video that Colin McCall created for the piece as an accompanying video. Is that it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think that's it. Yeah, and then we closed out with the drum line. The drum line kind of did some of their cadences and stuff they've been working on all semester. So
It's so fun to hear. We used to do that at Utah State. He'd have in the fall, the drum line would play like one tune inside, and it was just so fun to hear him play
fun.
Play for just a couple minutes inside. It's just like awesome, and the audience loves
very
it.
powerful. And it's cool to combine those communities. I don't know if it's the same for you guys, but at least here, most of the people in the drumline are not in the percussion studio. There's a little bit of overlap with the younger students, but
Yeah.
mostly not. So it's also a good recruiting tool for us saying, hey, the drumline sing percussion ensemble and maybe, participating in the spring. And then vice versa, the percussion studio getting to see the drumline a little bit more. So.
Hey, so speaking of your university, and I keep seeing your sweater, and it keeps reminding me, how is everything with the drama going on with the president and the football team, and is it affecting your life?
Yeah, well, I haven't been on campus since Tuesday night, but kind of a really brief overview of what happened is that there were some really big incidents that weren't responded to in the best way over the past 6 months, including our graduates' health insurance being taken away and then being reinstated, and just some things that maybe weren't dealt with in the best way, and as well as some racist incidents that have happened, and just kind of being brushed to the side rather than really dealt with and really apologized for and really taking steps to make sure that things like this aren't happening on our campus because it's not reflective of the people there. So this all kind of came to a head 2 weeks ago when Jonathan Butler, who's a graduate student and a member of a student organization called Concerned Student 1950, which represents the first year that a black student was allowed to enroll at the University of Missouri. And this student went on hunger strike because he just said, this is it, I cannot deal with these things anymore, and he decided to make a very public statement about it. Went on a hunger strike for an entire week, and we knew this was happening on campus. I was monitoring it on Facebook. I'm sure a lot of people were too, but it did not go beyond our campus as far as we saw much. So on day 8, which was last Sunday, the football team, the black students on the football team decided to stand up with Jonathan and the other students who had been protesting. They're also camping out on campus as well. They had a whole encampment set up, and they were staying there even though it was raining and it was cold and things. So once the football team stood up, this started to gain a lot of attention. And then the next morning, it happened Sunday night, the next morning, Monday morning, the rest of the football team went along with it, including the coach, Gary Pinkel. And they refused to play or practice at all until the hunger strike was over. And there was a list of demands that Jonathan Butler and Concerned Student 1950 were demanding, and that the one on top of the list was that the system-wide President Tim Wolf resigned. So that's not just University of Missouri Columbus, our gigantic campus, but also University of Missouri St. Louis, Kansas City, Missouri S&T, so the entire system-wide. So on this Monday, there was an emergency meeting from the Board of Curators, and they decided to remove Tim Wolf. So they removed the system-wide president. A couple hours later, the chancellor at the Columbia, our campus was removed as well. And so that was super national news. And then there was a whole thing the next day where the media had come in from all over to report what was going on here. And there was an incident because in that encampment that I described, the students said, we do not want any media in here. It's fine that the media is covering the protests and all the student things, but do not come in our encampment where we're living. This is where we want privacy. And however, the problem is that it's on public land, right? We're a public university, so it's on public land. So they can't technically do that. So there were some faculty and other students that were trying to help them keep the media out by linking arms. And somebody got on video, this communications professor kind of telling the student to get back. It was a student who I think was a freelance writer for ESPN or something that was there covering that he was a student. And she kind of pushed him and, said something to him, and that just went viral immediately. And so Tuesday, that's kind of what happened. And then Tuesday night, there were some cyber terrorist acts where it turned out to be 2 Missouri college students, but not on our campus. One was in Maryville, Missouri, and one was in Laurel, Missouri, that said some incredibly racist things and very threatening things about shooting people, and yeah, just threats. So people were going home, people were leaving campus, people were canceling classes.
Wow, I didn't hear about, man.
Yeah, it was insane. Oh. So then on Wednesday morning, which is when we left for PASIC, I guess no one was on campus. Julia was on campus that morning. She just said no one was on campus, no one was there. It was so sad, and everyone's scared. And so eventually they caught these 2 guys, and then things started to calm down after that. But yeah, I think this is happening at other universities too. We have a new president now. We've had a lot of communication from upper administration talking about how we have issues and we want to fix them and we want to work towards making sure the right people are in place to making this a very, very, very welcoming, inclusive campus of all races and religions. And so we're taking steps to do that. So it's a hard thing because it's a very private, growing process that our campus, we have issues. We admit that we have issues, and we're trying to fix them, and there are a lot of people dedicated and committed to fixing them. And it's a little bit unfortunate that we are in the public eye at a time where this probably needs to be dealt with privately now, you know?
You know, the first sense I got that it was like really bad was seeing Julia's Facebook post when she said, she had said, thanks Ben, she had said, hey, we are such a nice campus, all this stuff, and she made this kind of outcry post that just, because I know her personally, so I kind of felt what she was saying.
Yeah.
I was like, oh man, it must be really bad there. But I would just like to say to everyone who might be listening, I visited the campus twice, and man, I would have no idea there would be anything, you know, I mean, it's totally a healthy, normal campus, and anyone who wants to go pursue music or art or anything there, I think you would be perfectly fine to do so with Megan and Julia, of course. So anyway.
Thanks, Casey. That means a lot. And you know that this is by no means an isolated incident, and it's similar to Ferguson. You know, it happened in Ferguson.
Right.
But it could have happened in a lot of different places. And now you'll notice that there's kind of other universities. There was something at Ithaca that was happening, something at Yale, I think, that was happening. And so, yeah, it's not just us. We were just the ones that happened to be in the public spotlight. So hopefully this affects a lot of positive change, not just for us, but for other universities as well.
Yeah, of course. I wish my dad was on this episode because he loves talking about civil rights, and I don't think we talked about this on his episode. But growing up in Louisiana and being a basketball coach, I don't know if I've told. I know Laurel knows this, but my dad has had 2 crosses burnt on his lawn in his life.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah, and this has to do with him allowing his kids of different color to play ball at the same time.
Wow.
And because of the area he was in, he was one of the first coaches to do this. So anyway, he loves talking about civil rights issues, and you know, certainly current ones are really, you know, strike something personal with him.
Right.
Yeah. So,
well,
hey Ben, what did you plan on?
Real quick, I was going to add, just speaking of current issues, there's a quote from Leonard Bernstein that I always come back to. I love Leonard Bernstein, and I think he said some of the most profound things about music ever. And there was the terrorist attack in Paris on Friday, which also has obviously been very much in the news. And I haven't heard of any percussionists that were injured in that. So Frédéric Macrez, Eric Samu, all these guys we think of with Paris percussion. So thankfully, I don't think we're mourning any losses in the percussion community, at least. But every single time something like that happens, I always come back to this quote by Leonard Bernstein, and I just wanted to read it and share it with everyone on the podcast. He publicly responded, but the one line that always sticks out was, "This will be our reply to violence, to make music more intensely, more beautifully, and more devotedly than ever before." So
I love that quote. I love it. Yeah.
It really shows that, you know, as far as I know, no one's ever been hurt by music. It only brings joy to the world. It only brings, you know, positive things to the world. And as a percussionist, actually, you can make quite a huge difference in the world by sharing music. And I think that's something that when we're on the practice room shredding away at our stick control or, you know, method of movement studies or whatever, we can often lose track of. So my little, you know, Leonard Bernstein tidbit there.
Cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can go really far and say how I mean, you can build a really strong case. I know Laurel and I, when we were teaching music appreciation for the last several years at Concord University, the whole kind of point was to try to say art and music is about more than entertainment. And one of the ways you could build a case for is one of the first things I did with the class is just play simple intervals on the piano and have everyone just observe their emotional response. So you play a third and they get something, you know, kind of bland. You get a tritone and they get kind of agitated. You play a sixth and they get something sweet. And so you prove okay, music is the study of emotion. So then you combine all this stuff together, tension and release, blah, blah, blah. It's like the study of the human condition and la, 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 la. I mean, you can build a pretty scientific case for that to be true, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Anyway, Casey started to change gears to something much more positive.
Well, yeah.
Casey,
How was your
yeah.
concert, Ben?
So Casey was asking me about my concert. It went well. I was gonna just kind of like Megan did, run down what I played. So I started out. Are you guys? I know Casey's familiar with these. Are you guys familiar with the 8 postludes for bowed vibraphone?
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I did the 6.
I introduced Casey to
Oh,
those.
That is not true, Laurel.
That is not true. You
That is not-
never talked about them until...
I went to school with that dude.
You never talked about them. Continue, Ben.
Okay.
It's okay. It's okay.
Yeah.
So anyway, on my concerts, I always like to try and do something that people would like never expect when they go to a percussion concert. And this was like my response to that. Like, you come to a percussion concert and the first thing you hear is like lyrical bowed vibraphone. So then I followed that with the percussion movement from the first Terepnin Symphony that we talked about on, I think, our first episode, which is very loud and exactly what you'd expect to hear, and also one of the earliest things ever written for percussion ensemble. Then I followed that with the premiere, so we had the oldest and the newest, which is a mutual friend of Lauren and of Laurel and I, named David Pagel, who wrote a very nice piece for marimba solo with percussion quartet. That's kind of, the story behind it is based on getting lost in an IKEA. And the title, I can't even say the title, it's so corny. It's supposed to be like I can't even, but it's spelled IKEA, I can't even, like the name.
Yeah.
Just awful pun, but you gotta love it. But that's really fun. It's a lot of really fast marimba licks. I did the Proposal from Intentions, the tambourine trio by Eugene Novotny. I did Afterstuba by Mark Ford, which is a marimba trio with all 3 people on one marimba. I always like to feature a student soloist, so I had a student play the Zivkovic Pezzo da Concerto for snare drum. And then we did Casey's Theatric Number 10, which is a gesture-based piece, which I'm sure we'll link into our PASIC discussion in a minute. And it was cool. We got to Skype with Casey and go over the piece with Casey. And then we closed with Crown of Thorns. So yeah, and I don't know about you guys, but as soon as I finish one concert, I already start thinking about the next concert, what I'm going to do. And I kind of like fumbled around with some ideas, and I think for my next concert, I'm going to do every piece as a soloist with percussion ensemble. So I'm searching through repertoire to try and find for that. If there's a few for flute and percussion, there's a few for drum set and percussion, so I'm working on it.
Cool.
Neat.
Hey, well, speaking of Theatric Number 10, that was something Laurel and I did together at my concert, and of course the Focus Day concert at PASIC. This was Thursday afternoon. It was all about gesture, and this was the idea of Megan's teacher, actually, Michael Bump. Is that right, Megan?
Yep, that's correct. Yeah, and it was called Time and Motion, the Art of Percussive Gesture is the title of the day, the title of the session.
So, Ben, of course, there was a presentation of aphasia somewhere in the day. There were the Terry DeMay pieces. I forget what else. There was a lot
corporal,
of
right?
Yeah, there was a corporal duet. I was just going to ask you guys in general, because I hear, especially young people talking, that they often have said this gestural music, and it's all super new to them, and they say, I think this is the direction percussion is going, and this is where it's going to go and what it's going to be in the future. What do you guys think of that?
I think when a lot of the time people like to just kind of say this is where music is going, and it's like, okay, like Bach isn't going anywhere, of course, but I do think there's a lot of interest behind that, and percussion is such a visual art as it stands. Just looking at a marimba player is pretty interesting alone, I think. So I certainly think there is going to be more exploration of it. To say that's like where all of percussion is headed, not so much. But yeah, I think it's a very interesting category. And one of the most interesting challenges with it, really, I think, is notation, which every theatrical piece I've played has had, or gestural piece, I should say, I've played has had different notation between Casey's piece that we just did and table music and aphasia, which aphasia was a piece I had to just completely figure out how to learn the piece itself. So. But yeah, I think the notation in particular is very interesting to talk about in composition classes and things.
Yeah, there was a kind of paper presentation last year about that. Do you remember his name, Casey? Is that who we met at?
I'll I'll figure it out real quick.
I'll say the wrong name, so I don't want to say the name, but it was all about using Lavon's dance notation as a means to describe our physical movements in these types of pieces. So Rudolf Lavon was this dancer and choreographer, before video, and they went through these really challenging times of how on earth do we record choreography if we can't video it. And so he came up with this rather complex system, and this particular this guy whose name I can't remember.
I'm still looking. Yeah.
Yeah, he said, what if we just use that, and then we can have this consistent notation, which was interesting, except Lavon is complicated to look at.
Kyle Maxwell Doherty.
Kyle Maxwell Doherty. Yeah. I think it's cool because I've studied Lavon from a physical movement perspective, not from a paper notation perspective. So it was interesting to see that.
So this dude's thesis that I don't know if he's done what he's working on, but Kyle is working on this. It's kind of like a proposal, because like Ben said, every one of these gestural visual pieces has its own notation. And he's saying, hey, we already have this notation. It's called Lavon notation. It's a dance choreography notation. And he actually went through and rewrote my piece and aphasia, and I'm not sure what else. And I don't know if he did the whole things, but he really made these beautiful paper presentations of what they could look like.
Wow, that's really interesting.
It really does make sense because it's sometimes, the function of the notation, which is obviously in the end to make music, really does, specialization is necessary, but other pieces, like Casey's piece, for example, is fairly well notated to the point where,
fairly well notated?
Well, I'll get to that in a second. But the point is, you can do the piece without, having to, ask too many questions about it. But for example, on Casey's piece, there were a couple things at the end where, I figured it went some certain way, and I asked Casey, and he said, yeah, you're right, it's exactly, but there was a bit of ambiguity that some of my students were like, no, I don't think that's right. So I was like, well, I asked the composer, and it is right. But but yeah, I mean, it's really difficult. Like I said, how would you play? There are poorly engraved pieces like Cerrone 48. I'm sorry, but it's not very well engraved on the page in the Portraits and Rhythm book. But I can still, do it because I have my other musical knowledge of conventional notation to go on. Whereas if Casey's piece was poorly notated, I couldn't figure it out,
Well, and I think he has a good point. It just means we don't have to spend time reinventing the wheel and coming up with a new notation to describe our piece, which would save you so much time. I mean, it took me so long to notate some of those pieces. Your piece wasn't too bad, but say Bad Touch or that snare drum piece with the visuals, I poured so much time into just deciding how to notate them, and it'd be so cool if that system was just waiting for you and you could spend all that time on just the music.
I did want to add though that sometimes when we try to come up with a standard system, it doesn't work so well, and the thing I always remember is, you guys know those little pictographs where you can indicate hard yarn mallet or soft yarn mallet or timpani mallet or whatever, and it's if I've never seen that on a piece of music that I've played, but if I ever played a piece of music that had that, I'd have to go get that red music notation book. I can't remember who it's by, and I'd have to look it up, So sometimes the notation does make sense to have specialized. Other times, if you just wrote timpani mallet, I would know exactly what you meant,
Yeah.
But I think even if it was somewhere, somewhat fluid, so similar to drum set notation, where there are a lot of standard things, but then some things change a little bit. So as long as there's a key, but the learning curve is lower because 75% of it is standard. I don't know. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and I think the general things, the rhythm tends to go this way. If there is some high and low, even if it's your movements, they of course reflect high and low. I remember looking at table music for the first time when I was a student and just thinking like, wow, this is so difficult. There's so much to learn here. And then once you do learn it, you think,
Yeah,
wow,
yeah,
this
exactly.
is like the only way you could write this, and you really buy into the whole system.
Yeah, and table music is notated well enough that there are a few like errors or omissions in that piece that you can figure out what he means because it is so well notated.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Hey, so Laurel gave a presentation, her first presentation at PASIC. So
It was so good.
Yeah,
Casey,
way
your
to-
concert, your concert and you guys playing together too was so good. And Laurel, your presentation was awesome. All my students went
cool.
and they were like, "She's amazing." Really.
That's so cool.
Cool. Well, thanks so much, Megan. So, hey,
Yeah.
Laurel, of course I saw your presentation, but what I didn't see was about the 30 minutes of people asking you questions afterwards, because I was talking to some friends of ours, and I was just wondering what did you guys talk about? What were people asking? What were they? I don't know. What did they come to Health and Wellness to find out initially?
Yeah, it was kind of interesting. What I got was a bunch of individuals asking me really specialized questions about them, which was kind of cool, you know, like people were asking, so when I sleep I get this, and I was like, okay, all right, well, I'm not going to watch you sleep, so I'm not totally sure how to answer this question. You know, but it was really cool that like some type of trust was developed between me and all these people, and they felt like they could ask about these really specific little spots of pain or aching or something. Like someone asked me about, you know, his ankle for playing bass drum with drum set, and it occurred to me later, like I should have asked him, does your ankle hurt when you drive your car? That might answer a lot of your questions. So if you're listening, does your ankle hurt when you drive your car? Somebody else, was asking about, the neck and sleeping, and and I just said you got to try to fall asleep in a flat position, and if you can't do that, just try to lay there for 10 minutes that way, and then go to sleep like normal, and just about noticing things as they come up, and so. That was really cool because I partially felt like, wow, this is already way above my pay grade, and then I had a moment of like, no, I've researched this a lot. I've studied this for like almost 10 years. I can answer these questions.
Yeah.
So that was really cool, but the kind of the most generalized question I got was from a student named Blake, and he was asking about, marimba pieces, and you get to the hard part, and inevitably you get kind of tense because the music usually gets really tense too. And he said, what do you think about when you get there? And he said, do you think about the notes and just, being precise, or do you think about relaxing? And I said, you think about relaxing. That's what you should think about, because by the time you're playing, you've got the notes and everything. You're not going to miss those.
I think one of my favorite things you said was one of the misconceptions. I forget if you called it the second or third misconception, but it was, if the music's hard, you should be working hard.
Yeah. So what I meant by that was that we tend to have this mindset that if we know something is really hard, like if you're a student and the first multi-piece you're given is rebonds,
Ben.
then you're kind of set up to think like, wow, this is really hard, so I have to feel like I'm really working, and if I don't feel like that, I must not be doing it right.
That being said, a great note I got from Nancy once was, Casey, you're making it look too easy, and it needs to have some stress in it.
Huh.
And of course, immediately it's like, wait, it's supposed to look easy, and it's like, no, I don't know. Actually, in this particular piece of music,
I heard a saying that was, it's like, music is making the easy stuff look hard and the hard stuff look easy.
Nice.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I think that's very true. And you can make something look hard to play, but play it with complete relaxation on the inside, kinesthetically speaking.
Well, I think let's put a link, and you have to remember to give it to me because I won't remember. Let's put a link in the description to your PDF from your presentation.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I was gonna say I thought that the repertoire excerpts were really effective because I think it would have been easy to talk about a mandolin roll and show that, but when you actually show it in the repertoire, I think people connect to that even more. And it's a very specialized group of people that you're talking to, and so I think you really came to people's levels in that way.
Laurel, could we pretend that someone missed your clinic, and could you give us one of those repertoire examples?
No, nope. Got to go to PASIC.
Please,
Ben.
Laurel.
Please, this is her contract. Nope, she'll be breaking her contract.
For live streaming, Ben.
Yeah, I can do one really quick. Let's see. Yeah, so my class was all about understanding arm structure, and that the skeletal system of the arm includes, of course, your hand, your forearm, your upper arm, but actually that the shoulder mechanism involves your collarbone and then your shoulder blade, which of course extends all the way to the midline of your body, which means that you always have the support of your back when you play, and that's something we tend to forget. So one of the misconceptions is that we think our arms start in line with our armpits instead of all the way in here, and so when we do that, we tend to kind of over stabilize the shoulder because we think it's not connected, if you will, and then when you do that, you tend to overwork everything in your upper arm and your lower arm, which means you get tight elbows and pains right back here, and you can get pain in your forearm and your wrist. And so a rep excerpt that I used was the beginning of Merlin, going from pianissimo to forte and getting to the top of the phrase, and how you can play it tight with a tight elbow, but you hurt by the time you finish the first phrase.
Yeah.
You're definitely not going to make it to the end. But then if you play it, of course, with the full support of your back, even though you don't use your entire upper body to play it pianissimo, if you can easily access it, if you wanted it, it's going to be relaxed, and your dynamics are smoother, your lines are smoother, your accuracy is better because you're not navigating through tension. So that was one example.
Cool.
That I used.
Yeah. Hey, so one thing that Laurel and I did miss at PASIC was Megan's panel discussion. We actually left Saturday morning. So Megan, I was wondering, or I was hoping you would kind of fill.
Nope, gotta go there, Casey. Gotta go to PASIC.
No, dude, that's my joke. You can't. Yeah. By the way, it's so nice to be on speaking terms again with Ben after our big Histoire du Soldat fight.
Notice
it's
the
really nice.
Did not say the L when he said that.
Histoire. Yeah, and thank you so much to all the French speakers in our audience for bringing some sense and some reason to this conversation.
I have to say, I'm really proud because I think my argument with Casey actually rivaled a Pius and Casey argument, which is impressive.
Oh, it was way better. Yeah. Our Pius and I's arguments are just, no, they're not nearly that substantive. Actually, people actually learned things from this argument. It was actually the whole point of the podcast coming out. No, that was the best thing ever. So as soon as you sign off, I'll declare who won and everything and all that.
No.
But anyway, Megan, you were going to talk about your panel discussion.
Yeah, please. Yeah, so
Sure,
you had a panel discussion.
Okay, yeah,
Was the spelling of Histoire discussed on your panel discussion by any chance?
It was
Should have been,
not.
apparently. Should have
It was
been.
not. So our topic was on graduate recruitment. So the panel was the university committee, and the chair of the university committee is Ben Fraley, who is a doctoral student at Florida State and adjunct teacher at Troy University. And so he moderated the panel, and the panelists were myself, Scott Herring from University of South Carolina, and Mike Burrett from Eastman. And it was a great conversation. There were several kind of set topics that we discussed, and we took questions as well. So a couple of those topics were, was everyone sharing their own experience of their graduate audition, which was really cool because, the three of us were auditioning for grad schools at very different times. So it was really interesting to kind of see the process through our 3 different stories. We also talked a little bit about just the grad programs at each of our universities, and Dr. Herring's and mine were kind of similar a little bit because we're at big state schools versus Eastman, where it was clearly very different. So that was kind of an interesting comparison. We also talked about if there are things, we kind of all agreed that we're looking for a very high level of playing in the student, and that's a given, right? And so the conversation was kind of, what additionally do you look for? Is there, do you look at service, publications, awards, teaching experience, and other supplemental materials? How do those things play into the audition? And so that was really interesting. And also, how does the audition repertoire that the student chooses to audition with affect the audition? You know, is it very specialized? Like, do most schools have a very, very, very set list? And if they don't, how do you choose? You know, and we talked a lot about choosing repertoire that you really believe in and that you feel like you can play well. And actually, similar to what we were discussing with the competition winners, you know, playing pieces that you feel like you really have a voice through, and how that shines through, just versus my teacher told me to play this, or this is a standard piece in the repertoire, so I feel like I should play it, or this piece has a lot of notes and I think it's impressive and I'm going to impress you and get it into your school. You know, but really having conviction behind what you're playing. So yeah, it was a good panel discussion, I thought, and it was well attended, which was cool too. It was on Saturday at 1, so you know, people kind of start taking off on Saturday, so it was nice that there were still a lot of people in attendance.
I actually have a question about what you were just talking about, because I was talking to one of my private students that's going to be auditioning at universities, and some people are like afraid to play a piece for a professor that they knows that piece really well. Like, for example, someone that would go to like Boston Conservatory and audition for Nancy Zeltzman with See a Thursday or something like that, and like I like never even considered that. Like, I played Con Variations for Svet Stoyanov, which he kind of knows that piece fairly well, and I never really thought about, like, was that a stupid idea? But at the same rate, like, I feel like if I played a piece that someone knows less well, like if you're playing for someone like Michael Bird or Nancy Zeltzman, even if they don't know the piece that well, they can still like pretty solidly musically evaluate someone, you know, based on the merits of their playing. So was there kind of a discussion of something like that, and like what was the conclusion drawn about audition repertoire?
Yeah, actually that specific topic was not really touched upon. But I mean, I have one opinion about that, not for the audition, but I think if someone that you're studying with knows a piece really well, I think that's an awesome way to completely get into their brain and like discover what's going on musically up there through a piece that they know extremely well.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
any audition piece you play, you should play well, obviously. So
of course,
like,
right.
Yeah, don't go play something poorly, but go, well, they didn't know that piece that well, so maybe they won't notice, or you know.
Right.
I think your student has a point though. I think there's something to that. You know, I know when I'm have to listen, it's your own opinion doesn't come into play as much when they're playing something you don't know. You know.
But I think most really good musicians, and maybe I'm wrong with this, sadly, but I think most really good musicians are able to say, like, solidly, this is my approach to the piece, but I also, you know, can understand other approaches, and like we could discuss it or argue about it, something like that. And I think that, like, with Con Variations with Svet, I mean, he has a very specific way he plays it. And in fact, Svet told me he's recorded it twice, and Vinyao likes the earlier recording better, and Svet likes the later recording, which is the one on his CD, better. So I think that, you know, like, there's certainly a lot of discussion to be had with a piece, you know, that intricate. And I think that I realized when I played it for Svet, you know, after having studied with him, I played it totally wrong according to his standards, but it was still a good, committed performance, which I think is more important.
Was there any question that kind of, I don't know, took over the panel, or that came from the audience that everybody was like, yes, we need to talk about this for 38 minutes?
Huh. Not really. I feel like we moved from topic to topic pretty smoothly. I'm trying to think. There was a lot of talk about like what are you looking for, or a lot of questions about what are you looking for. We also kind of talked pedagogically about assigning. Well, I kind of mentioned this already, but like making sure that students and making sure that you yourself are playing pieces that you're ready for, and not, Mike Bird especially really said, I don't want to hear a hard piece played poorly. I would rather hear an easy piece played really well, and hearing your musicality through that rather than see you struggle through something. Yeah. And in lessons too, not just audition.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be fun to see on the written requirements though? Like we want to see a piece that's like way too hard for you.
That's one thing I hate.
Wouldn't that be fun just to write?
I hate about, and we talked about this one other time, high school solo and ensemble. It's like, oh, I can't play that piece. It's a grade 4, and I need a grade 5 or above to take it to like state. Or it's like just play the piece because it's a good piece, not because of the grade,
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. On that note, kind of, sort of, I saw part of a competition once where a student played a piece so far under tempo that you couldn't tell it was the same piece.
Yeah.
And that like pissed me off beyond all reason.
Yeah, I saw a Merlin that was like that. It's like, okay, you hit all the octaves, but it was.
But we all know you didn't really play it. Yeah.
Yeah, it has to be ballpark. Yeah.
For real, yeah.
Well, I guess one other thing we did talk about quite extensively was just the importance of like being a good person and being an easy person to work with and being cool, and not just leaving the ego at the door, and how important that is in the graduate audition because of how closely you are working with a professor. You know, you're almost a junior professor in that way, and you're teaching and you're spending a lot of time together and sharing the load together, and it's going to be a miserable 2 or 3 years if you don't have a good working relationship. So the importance of just being easy to work with and like letting that shine through in your audition too, not saying, oh, well, I play it this way because my teacher told me to play it this way, or so-and-so told me to play it this way. Like, when you're working together in the audition, being open and, making changes on the fly, things like that. I think...
Hey,
go ahead.
Sorry.
That's it.
Okay, if that's it.
That's it.
I was going to ask, and I know, but I want you to tell everyone. How did you get picked to be on a panel?
Well, I guess the committee just talks about who they want to be on the panel. So the university committee, I'm not sure how many are on that, but Ben's the chair, and they have discussions via email, and they have a meeting when they're at PASIC.
Wait, sorry, that's Ben Fraley, by the way, not me.
Ben Fraley. Ben Fraley.
Just to clarify.
Yes. And so I guess they've just kind of basically selected nominations, and it seemed that definitely like they were looking for a younger teacher, or they were looking for someone who's a little more established and someone who's been doing this for a long time and is really well respected in the field. I thought it was interesting because we all thought it was interesting because we all were MJB students, so we did kind of have this similar thread, this similar upbringing since we had studied with him, and we thought that might hinder the conversation a little bit, but I don't think it did. I thought us being from different and being at different stages in our careers made it really rich conversation.
Yeah,
so,
that's what I would want to hear. Yeah,
it just came from within the committee. They just accepted nominations and I guess voted on it between themselves.
It's so funny because you hear a lot of people talk about applying and they'll be frustrated because they, can't get picked and they want to get picked so badly. And actually, I sat at the open portion of the Focus Day meeting the year before Mike Bump announced that this was going to be the topic, and I guess they were just kind of talking about how to word the proposal and what it really is, and so many people were asking about what gesture is, and they said a lot of what we just said. Well, like all percussion is inherently gestural, so what are you getting at? Like, can we do this? Can we do that? Can we do that? And so many people, it has to do with what my dad said about you should do the research first, then get the grant money, not see what grant money is available and then pick your topic. So it seemed like a lot of people were just really interested in getting picked. They weren't necessarily passionate about, or excuse me, at least the people who were asking in the meeting, they weren't necessarily passionate about some specific thing they wanted to put on. They just wanted to know, okay, what does it take for me to get picked? What do I got to play? What do you want to see? So anyway, that really reminded me of what my dad just said on a few episodes ago about how research works now, how it used to work, and blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, I can't remember. Did they announce the focus day topic for next year at, like, the current year's PASIC?
No, it's already out.
It should already be out, yeah.
Yeah.
So do we know what it is for next year yet?
Yeah, it's European Avant-Garde, I think.
Yeah, the European Avant-Garde by Andy Bliss.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Let's see. So I was just going to, real quick, just want you guys each to say, when was your first PASIC and how impactful was your first PASIC? Megan.
Oh my gosh, I'm trying to figure out the year, but it probably would have been around 2001 or 2002. And it was extremely impactful. I think it was in Louisville, I'm pretty sure. And I just, like, absolutely mind-blowing. I think I had done drum corps for one summer, and that's how I knew about it. I think my friends were like, oh, we'll see each other at PASIC. I was like, what's PASIC? It was extremely impactful, and I remember that PASIC introducing me to PAS, and really the publications having a huge effect on my musical development from that point, just because I think the internet wasn't so much of a thing yet. There weren't nearly as many resources, and so just really starting to read and learn names and kind of seeing what's out there. So. Yeah.
What about you, Ben?
My first PASIC was in 2006 in Austin, and you were asking, like, what was the impact like? It was really cool for me for two reasons. One, I remember I think it was the first day of PASIC. One of the first things that I saw when I went into the exhibit hall was the Malatech booth, and there was standing Gordon Stout. And it was actually cool to me that I think next week, actually, we're releasing the Gordon Stout episode, but it was like I had played 2 Mexican dances in high school, and I brought my score in hopes of running into Mr. Stout and having him sign it. So it was like super dorky, but like, oh my God, Gordon Stout is in front of me. Like, it was like, running into a celebrity for me. So that was like my first, like, holy crap, this is amazing. Like, this is where all the world's greatest people are. And then the other really cool thing about that PASIC is I was an undergrad student at University of North Texas, and that was the year that North Texas did one of the evening concerts, and they did 4 percussion concertos in one night. So they opened up, not a concerto, they opened up with Lollapalooza by John Adams, and then they did, in no particular order, the Bruce Yurko Concerto for 9 percussionists, the Bill Kraft Concerto for 4 percussionists, Prism Rhapsody with Keiko Abe, and The Glory and the Grandeur by Russell Peck, the new band transcription at the time. And they did that concert twice at North Texas and once at PASIC, and I saw it all 3 times, and my mind was blown every single time. So that was like my first PASIC experience. It was
cool.
So awesome. I was like a kid in a candy store, especially when I saw Gordon Stout.
Very cool. Yeah, I would love to see little Ben. Like,
I have a picture. I'll try and find the picture and share it. Maybe we can put it on the Facebook post for this.
I like the picture of you and Keiko Abe, which we have already included on an episode.
Yeah, and that was when she was in Texas. I got to play in a master class for her at North Texas. And again, like, I was about to pee my pants because I went up to play Memories of the Seashore, and Keiko Abe started improvising on top of it, and it was like, that was like the second in my musical life that just like made me go like, yes, this is what I want to do. And I got an awesome picture with Keiko Abe where I'm like leaning over and I'm still way taller than her.
Laurel, you want to tell us about yours?
Yeah, I was at that one in 2006 and at that concert. But my first one was in 2004, which I think was the last year. It was in Nashville, Tennessee. And even as a student, it was kind of clear like this convention center doesn't seem to be big enough.
Yeah.
But
San Antonio was huge.
yeah, it was ridiculous. But
I was talking
think,
to my colleague, our band director here, and he was like, "How was it going? How was it and everything?" And I said that San Antonio was huge. He said, "Yeah, that one is particularly huge."
yeah, it's massive. But I think that first year I went, I don't know, I would have to look it up, but I think Erico actually had this big solo performance in the middle of the day that I went to, and it was just like the coolest thing I'd ever seen in my life. Was watching Erico play. I think it was that first year. But yeah, that was it for me.
Well, I only ask because it seems that the first one is such a big deal for everyone. I know it was for me too, and
Yeah.
I always just encourage the young folks. You got to go once, just to at least learn and know what's out there. It's just such a mind-blowing thing to find out.
So, hold on real quick. I just want to say, as proof of my ultimate dorkiness that I just described, I remembered I have this in this room.
Oh, there you go.
Nice.
Out.
Cool.
Casey, when was your first PASIC, Casey?
I want to say it was the one that you said, 2000 or 2001, and yeah, it was. I don't even remember particularly the specifics. I remember it just being like, what it is, and when you're young, wow. Let's see, and what I think was really interesting, of course, it motivated me like crazy. Like, the students come back from PASIC and they're all pumped up practicing like crazy because they're so excited about what they're doing and this life pursuit that they know so much more about now. A few of the students I went with, they came back depressed because
too. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was going to ask,
Yeah,
have you guys seen that?
Yeah. It can be very, I mean, for me it's very intimidating, like being in that exhibit hall and everyone's, playing super fast on marimbas and things, yeah.
I think they, when you're that young, you see experts at all these different things, and you think they're all equally amazing, and you don't know which one you want to do, and you can't be that good at all those things.
It can make you feel little, yeah.
Yeah, but I think that's great. Like, that's just exactly why it's so cool. I see you guys want to talk about the All-Star Ensemble.
Yeah. Oops, where does this come from? Well, I kind of wanted to. I thought that this was a really cool thing that happened this year. I don't know if it has ever happened before, but it was the idea of Eric Willey, who I believe is a Percussion Ensemble Committee chair, and Anna Provo, who's a student delegate, head of the student delegate committee. And they put it in a proposal together to make this happen. And ultimately, they had 60 applications and chose 26 percussionists. You had to be in an undergraduate percussion program at the time of applying, international, domestic, whatever. And you had to send, I believe, 2 videos of yourself along with a recommendation letter from someone. And when they chose the 26, they ended up dividing it up. And they chose Michael Burrett to be the conductor / coach / solo performer as well. And so I thought it was really cool because they only had 2 nights to put this whole program together. And they rehearsed at University of San Antonio and University of Texas San Antonio, I guess. And yeah, very, very, very short time to put this together. And so they did Roldan, Ritmica number 5. They played Ionization. They played a new piece by Ivan Trevino, a new piece by David Skidmore, a piece by Michael Burrett that he expanded for, that he wrote for him soloing with Nexus, and so he expanded the 4 ensemble part to 6 people.
What piece was that?
White Pines was the movement, I believe. And then they played Stone Wave, the Ralph Wallen Stone Wave, one movement 3 from that. And it was very effective. I mean, it was crazy. You know, there are a lot of instruments on stage, but I think, you know, these 26 students are the top of the crop. And the directors, you know, obviously Eric and MJB are super experienced in what they do. So I think when you put all those people together, like, it just happened, you know, it just made it happen. And it was really well played concert, and there was a lot of really cool energy. And I think it probably brought a lot of people to PASIC that maybe wouldn't have been there otherwise.
Yeah.
So I don't think they're going to do it every year, maybe every 4 years or every other year or something, but I just thought it was a really cool experience.
I really like the kind of like only at PASIC type of events, because it's cool to see, you know, a drum set clinic or whatever, but I can see that any day. And two that stick out in my mind are, what year was that? 2011. They did the 50 marimba orchestra.
Yeah.
Which I played in that. I was one of the marimba players in that, which, again, like, how often do we get that many marimbas together? And then another one is the Janice Potter and Friends concert, which was maybe the same year. I think it was, actually. But it was like Janice Potter, Mark Ford, Shi Wu. What's that guy's name? Guy from Maryland. What am I? Oh, anyway, it was Janice Potter and a bunch of really great players. All, again, very quickly put together this concert. Christopher Dean wrote a new piece for it. And, like, it's kind of like my dream one day is to do a concert of, like, Crown of Thorns and Palace of Nine Perfections and things like that with, like, people like Mark Ford playing the marimba parts. I think would be really cool.
Yeah.
That would be cool. Speaking of Christopher Dean, I really liked his talk, and one of the things he said was just, hey, we can still write really amazing music. And
he premiered a new piece, I think, at PASIC, or at least it was one of the very first performances of it, which the title alone I think is really clever. It's kind of a take on Rube Goldberg Machine and Goldberg Variations. It's called The New Rube Goldberg Variations. I don't know anything about the piece, but the title alone is pretty clever to me.
Yeah. It was good. PASIC was a lot of fun. It was a very, despite playing, it was a very relaxed year, even though we did a lot. Cool. Hey, well, especially thanks to Megan for doing this today, because you traveled today.
Yeah, I'm all sleepy, but it's all good.
You look so beat.
I feel so beat.
No, thanks so much for doing it.
Yeah.
You know, I was gonna say, not to bring it back to a downer note, but back when we were talking about the drama on campus, and also along with PASIC, PASIC is the one place where, like, yeah, you can meet Gordon Stout and have that feeling of like, whoa, there's this celebrity in my world that I know. It's like the only one place where someone like that is kind of a true celebrity, and we often complain about how our world isn't appreciated enough. It's not big enough. It doesn't get the credit it deserves. It doesn't get the money it deserves. Blah 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 blah. But it's like, man, football or basketball, which like does get all the credit and money it deserves, it also drags all these problems with it, you know. And it's just so nice that, like, I mean, I know music has all sorts of problems, but it's like not on the scale or the magnitude, you know. I mean, it's just like nothing like that. So I feel like it's cool that it's small. Like I don't want you know, I don't want all the baggage that comes along with hordes of people and big money and all of that.
Casey does not want money, ladies and gentlemen.
Send
any checks to me.
On my first flight today, my seat was next to Julie Hill.
Whoa, cool.
How crazy is that? So it was cool. Julie Hill's the president of PAS, the current president of PAS, and she's going to be joining us in a couple of weeks. So look forward to that. I think it'll be a really good conversation with her.
Yeah,
She's
definitely.
A very interesting person. Lots of good things to say.
Yeah, can't wait. And I've also lined up some people. I shouldn't talk about that on air because it might not happen. But hey, you guys, thanks so much for doing this and trying our first like live thing with no editing and stuff. And I guess people out there, if you did chime in to the live thing, let us know, because this is our first time trying this. And also, if you enjoy the video just the same without all the bells and whistles of video editing and video overlay, let me know, because I'd love to someday not do that. It's a lot of work. But I
it
don't
looks
know.
so good.
I know it's so like informative, and it's such an easy way to present some of the topics, and yeah. So anyway, thanks you guys. Take it easy.
Yeah.
All right.
Bye, guys.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Gordon Stout this Thursday. Bye bye.
Gordon Stout.
Yeah.